Have you ever felt trapped in a relationship that drains your soul, leaving you questioning your own sanity? Welcome to Narcissistic Abuse with Vanessa Reiser, the podcast that shines a light on the dark tactics of abusers and empowers survivors to reclaim their lives. I'm Vanessa Reiser, licensed therapist, author, advocate, and fellow warrior on the path to healing from narcissistic and cult abuse. Joining me for many upcoming episodes is my co-host Dave. We'll unpack each conversation together, diving deeper into narcissistic abuse, cult dynamics, politics, pop culture, and what it all means for real-life healing. Today, we'll hear harrowing stories from survivors, explore the psychology behind these toxic relationships, and share insights and tools to spot red flags, break free, and begin profound healing. This show is for mature audiences and may include upsetting topics like violence. For full content warnings, sources, and resources, check the episode notes. Guest opinions are their own and don't necessarily reflect mine or any affiliated platforms. This podcast is not a substitute for therapy, legal, or medical advice. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. It's your host, Vanessa, coming to you from right here in Red Bank, New Jersey. And I am so thrilled you're joining me today. Today we have the best co-host ever, Dave, joining us. We are jumping straight back into an incredible show. Last episode, I sat down with the incredible Dr. Cathy Barrett, a licensed clinical forensic psychologist specializing in narcissistic abuse recovery, coercive control, complex trauma, emotional and sexual abuse, and forensic evaluations in high conflict cases. With her background in marriage and family therapy, plus her doctorate in clinical forensic psychology, she's an expert on the psychological impacts of narcissistic personalities, family court dynamics, risk assessment in domestic violence, and helping survivors rebuild after profound betrayal and manipulation. If you haven't listened yet, pause this right now. Go catch that full interview because, wow, it's powerful, it's raw, and it's one you won't forget. Today, Dave and I are doing the deep dive, and we will be doing this every week after every episode. So send us all of your questions after every show so we can answer everything. We're unpacking the biggest moments from that conversation, reflecting on what Dr. Barrett shared about spotting red flags and narcissistic dynamics, the long-term effects of coercive control and emotional abuse, navigating forensic and court-related trauma, and the resilience it takes to heal and reclaim your truth. We'll talk through some of the themes that hit hardest and even touch on a few things we didn't get to cover in the new episode. Whether you're here because you follow Dr. Barrett's work in narcissistic abuse recovery, forensic psychology, or high conflict divorce contexts, or you just discovered her insights last week, this recap is for you. It's about resilience, awareness, and the real conversations that need to keep happening. We want this to be an interactive experience, whether you are seeing this on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, or any other platform. We will be saving all of your questions about every guest and answering them to the best of our abilities. So please like and subscribe. Grab your headphones, settle in, and let's get into it. Dave, how are you?
Good afternoon.
Yeah, definitely cranking today. Today was a long one. How are you doing?
Where I live, we had very warm temps last week, and then now it's gone back down cold. So we got this little hint of spring, and then we got a dose of reality. So yeah, I'm struggling with that stuff, but whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah, it's warm here in New Jersey. It was warm yesterday and gloriously so. 70s.
Yeah.
Just insane. I got very manic as I predicted and started doing some shit in the yard. And it's really nice. You could just feel the windows are open. Oh my God. Thank you for bringing that up. It's really a blessing right now, especially after that winter. That was brutal.
Yeah, and then with the state of the world right now, this weather for people on the East Coast, it's not helping. That's for damn sure. I think we need a
Yeah.
little more vitamin D, a little more warmth, a little more sun.
Yeah. I laid out
Yeah.
in the sun actually yesterday for a little while. Even got a little burned. My
Oh,
face is
wow.
actually nice, but
Wow.
yeah, so let's talk about Cathy Barrett. I have been fanning out about her, as I told you, for a long time. Huge fan. She's so authentic, so down to earth. Went to USC, so my alma mater, fight on. But she's so refreshing because she's so brilliant, but she's just super grounded, does really important work. I'm a big fan. What did you think?
I know, listen, you've told me about her, and you hit the nail on the head. She's awesome. She has an amazing experience, and I love how she represents a lot of disenfranchised communities, and then how in the clinical space and then in the criminal space, having to work with those people. She has such fascinating insights into it. But the thing that I found most fascinating about her and her story is how she ended up in a relationship with someone who she studies. And I think for listeners, it's such a good example how some of the seasoned people in this world, the trained people who know this shit like the back of their hand, can still end up in a relationship with them. And that is so validating. It's so validating for survivors, because I know in the space that we're in, you hear from people all the time, they beat themselves up and there's so much shame around it. It's like, I should have known better. I should have left. I should have this. I should have. No.
Right.
We have to remove the shame from that. And she's a perfect example of how somebody who is educated and knows this can still end up in it.
Yeah. I trust her so much. I send a lot of my high profile cases in California her way. In some ways, and I've been saying this for years too, is she's in the belly of the beast, because if you think about Hollywood, right? So in the California where she's located, like those are people who are going to be highly performative. They're at putting on a show. They know how to fake the tears and then cut and go to craft services. They know exactly how to just turn it on, turn it off. And I've often said that Hollywood has to be just riddled with narcissism because of that component. They are actors and actresses, and they know how to portray different roles, play different roles. So she gets a lot of, I think, of a lot of the more high profile things. I guarantee you her client base is just filled with heavy hitters, really heavy hitters, because she works with Dr. Ramani. And so they're gonna, and I know Ramani is really busy, so it's gonna trickle into her, and she probably has seen and heard some crazy shit.
Well, I can remember years ago, Dr. Ramani talking about how there's certain areas in the world that will naturally attract more narcissistic people, right? Hollywood being one of them, Wall Street, the people who are so driven by power, success, and money. So in California, I think the percentage of the general population that have narcissistic personality disorder or very highly narcissistic traits, I think logically speaking, you would think that it has a higher percentage in those areas.
Yeah.
Especially Hollywood. Really, especially Hollywood, because think about it, they get paid to wear a mask for a living.
Exactly. And they make money.
Right.
And they get that fame. Oh, it's got to be just riddled. I don't even know what it would be like to date in Hollywood, because it would just be, are you putting on a show the whole time? At least in New York, where I'm from, isn't that Universal Studios vibe. There's not everybody there's a lot of famous people who live in New York. There's not a studio right there. So they're not going to sit there, and you're not really bumping into the Scorseses. They're all in California. It's just
the Shooter McGavins, right? Hey, how you doing?
Yeah. It's gross. I don't know. It's a weird thing. And we've talked a little bit too about how social media and some of these platforms are really saturated with characters like that who are looking for the fame, the money, adulation, the attention, and all of this. So it feels it's a highly problematic area.
It has to be. You hear the stories of people dating in Hollywood or in and around the greater Los Angeles area, and it's just, the dating world's hard enough as it is, but throw that level of narcissism or toxicity into the dating pool, and then throw the apps on top of that, where it's instant gratification, move on, ghost, the whole 9 yards. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it at all.
Yeah. And I love that in the clinical space, if I'm looking for mentorship and I reach out to Cathy or Ramani, they are always ready to hold space for me. And I'm really blessed because there have been challenges that I've faced, whether it was professionally or personally, and they're just very validating. And I can't, it's super important. Because the other thing is, being a clinician, I can't share the stories that I hear every day, obviously. And it's hard for most people to understand this. So when you find clinicians that get it, there's a tribe that this person really understands what it's like to hold space for all of these stories and stuff like that. So there's a magic, I think, in finding clinicians that really get it. So she's one of those people that I really admire and respect. I also that she's doing work for the LGBTQ community and she has a perspective there. So it's really, I find her to be so interesting. And politically, she's pretty disturbed by so there's always that we can always chat about. And we did get into it quite a bit, actually. But I do think it is relevant. All of my clients are coming to me and are triggered. Similarly, what we started this today talking about, even the weather. My clients have been coming in very recently because of the weather and I feel like I have seasonal affective disorder. I feel depressed or I feel down. And it's nice to hear you're not the only one, right? So that's a theme right now, is the weather. Another theme is politics. So I am noticing people are coming in and wanting to talk about certain things. But we did talk a lot about politics. Was it too much, do you think?
No, here's the thing. I was thinking about that when I was listening to the podcast. I think anyone who has gone through narcissistic abuse, come out on the other side, or is in the process of learning about all the traits, the playbook, everything that happens in a narcissistically abusive relationship or a cult relationship, I think what happens is people look at the geopolitical situation that we're in right now completely differently. They look at it completely differently. Because the pattern recognition that you're starting to see on these world leaders, on these elite people, I can see how it's triggering. Like, even for me, I've gone into my settings in Instagram and changed my algorithm so that I don't see as much of that stuff, because it's just constantly bombarded in your face all day, 24/7, as soon as you're scrolling. And then you go down the rabbit hole, and then you and I talk about the rabbit holes all the time that we go down. But
I thought about doing the podcast today, just wearing a tinfoil hat to make you laugh. I've actually thought about crafting a tinfoil hat. And I was like, somebody's going to screen grab that and put it on the internet. Look at this crazy. She's such a crazy, this kind of stuff. But yeah, I find myself second guessing things that I know to be true and wondering about a lot of things, because it's so hard with AI and misinformation to imagine what's right. So you feel crazy. And fortunately, you and I joke about that all the time. But yeah, the tinfoil hat, I thought about starting the podcast with a tinfoil hat. That would be so Vanessa. Like, hey, Dave.
Yeah, that probably would have thrown me for a loop.
Market them. The crown that I sent you a picture of a crown. You could make it fashionable, maybe.
Oh my God. We could probably get someone in China to mass produce it.
Yeah.
Because listen, at the end of the day, I think what's happening globally is people are starting to wake up to the grift. And people are waking up and they're challenging their own beliefs. Even myself, I've changed my position on a few things over the last few years, not because of a social media trend, but it's been more, you and I have spoken about a few of those things where I was, okay, let's put our confirmation bias, or not our confirmation bias, but put our biases aside and really take a look at this situation. Try to look at both sides of the coin, try to look at the history of all this stuff, and not buy into or take a position of what we're seeing or what we're consuming in the media. There may be a slant on it, or there may be somebody who's trying to have the population think a certain way. So take all of those things out and try to be impartial and try to look at these political issues, these global issues, put them aside and think and just critically think. And that's led me down a few rabbit holes where I've changed my mind on a few things.
A lot about APAC. I didn't know. For me, I was so focused historically on this Trump MAGA experience and how treacherous it is, which it is, and I stand fully, solidly in that. However, let's say MAGA disappears tomorrow, there are still so many issues that need to be fixed in terms of globally and who's getting funded and what's Congress up to. And we are really in trouble because we can't even have those intelligent discussions right now. We can't have grand debates around abortion or the death penalty. We are so far away from collaborating and crossing the aisle in America about any of that. We are off the rails. Who's a comedian who said having Trump in office is having a horse in the hospital? You're not really sure what to do with it. It's just running around.
Yeah.
I think it was Mulhaney, whatever, what's his name? Mullaney. It's a very strange thing and nobody knows what to do. So we're just stunned and confused. And until we can get the horse in the hospital, there's no way we can talk about anything else.
There's a really interesting clip of Jim Jeffries, the Australian comedian. This is going back, I want to say it was like it was when Trump was running for office the first time. And he has this really funny line where he's on stage and he's Trump. He's a funny guy. He's an interesting character. And then he squats down and he looks at the crowd and he's like, fuck it, let's do it. Let's just see how crazy shit can get. And it was funny at the time, right? Because Trump was that reality TV guy with funny hair and an orange tan, and everyone was, wouldn't that be so funny if he became president of the United States? And then it was, fuck around and find out. We're living it right now. No, I was just going to say, as an outsider, because I'm not American and I'm looking at the decisions that are made by lawmakers and Congress and all of this stuff, and you sit there and you scratch your head and you think, they're not voting based on their constituency. They're voting based on something else that is controlling their vote. It's obvious. And then when you start looking at cult dynamics, right? Look at Scientology, look at Nexium. All of those cult dynamics have some level of blackmail. They've got dirty secrets on people, and that's how they control people. And then you take a look at the Epstein stuff and you see how there's these world leaders who are allegedly, I have to say that for legal purposes, into some crazy shit.
Yeah.
And you can see how when you learn about the cluster B spectrum and then you learn about cults and how they work, and then you see what's happening real time in front of our eyes, you realize what the F is going on right now. And it's
and I think
sad.
When I first, to your point, for the listeners who have dealt with a narcissist, when you see them be intimidating or they peacock or they fluff out their feathers, historically, I would counsel my clients on a good amount of this is just noise. Mm-hmm. And I would vacillate between the absurdity of their behavior. Oh, this is just almost a child tantruming. And then the severe hazard that they are. And I think it's really important to highlight that I have now moved in the direction of this being a severe hazard. There's a couple of reasons for that as it relates to Trump, and I believe other narcissists, when they are lame duck, when they're aging, when they don't have a hold on things the way that they once did, this version of a narcissistic collapse or them becoming sadistic or punishing. So it feels the walls might be closing in. And that, creates a severe hazard on an absolutely global scale. And I think a lot of people feel that energy. They're really nerved up around what is this going to look like? What is he capable of, kind of thing. So I've unhanded the idea of they're just puffing out their feathers. And I actually think that with time, they can become severely hazardous. And I also believe that Trump was always hazardous because I don't think I took him as serious. Like, I didn't know he was having sex with young kids. Like, that was something that maybe I had heard and sort
allegedly.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. But I think that's really interesting. So he's always been a hazard.
Yeah, and I don't think people realized just how much of a hazard it was. There obviously there was some people who were sounding the alarm, and a lot of those people were dismissed as, "Oh, you're just being a conspiracy theorist, or you're overdoing it." And I'll be honest with you, I was probably one of them because I was like, it can't be that bad. Like there's no way they're going. Like, I can remember thinking, they're never going to overturn Roe v. Wade. There's no way. That's just political posturing, and it's the political game. And then it happened. And then people started talking about some of the other things that they were going to do. And I was like, no, listen, Roe v. Wade was one thing. They're not going to start doing it. You know what I mean? And now it's like, at what point in time, and I think you talked about it with her on the podcast, of like, what's the breaking point? When do people finally go, okay, now this is getting serious? And I think she hit the nail on the head. It's when it starts impacting you personally in some way, shape, or form. We've seen the farming communities in the United States turn on MAGA. I've seen interviews of people talking about how they voted for Trump, and then when the tariff thing happened, how their farming communities losing millions of dollars, people having to declare bankruptcy. They're starting to now realize that it's affecting them. And the kids thing, I think, is another big one. Even in the prison system, there's an honor about you can be a criminal, you can murder people, but you don't touch children. And I
Pedophiles
think
don't have an easy time in jail.
yeah. And I think we're seeing a fracturing in the population right now. And at the end of the day, as I said, as an outsider, what I see what's happening now, this is not a left versus right thing anymore. This is not. I think there's a lot. I think people kept saying that the country was completely divided. I think there's a lot more commonality between people on the left and people on the right, but you're made to think that you're completely divided. But when you start seeing people, Tucker Carlson coming together with Cenk from the Young Turks, when you see these traditionally left people and traditionally right people, both sides waking up going, wait a second, we've had the wool pulled over our eyes. This is not a left versus right thing anymore. This is an us versus them. And them, I think, is being highlighted from the Epstein files that are coming out, right? You're seeing Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton defending Trump under oath? What the fuck?
Yeah, and I think it's also understanding who's pulling the strings as it relates to, as I mentioned, AIPAC, Israel, things, who's really behind even Epstein. Was Epstein really the head honcho, or are there other people that were exploiting him? Was he the collateral gatherer, etc.? So there's a lot of still things that are not, I don't think, totally understood yet. But to your point, it's comforting, I think, in some ways, that it isn't a left versus right anymore, because my hope is that people on the right will glitch out from the MAGA cult, meaning it's not that the left versus right thing as much. However, I will say this, the right is really almost, I'm a Democrat, and I'm a raging woke Democrat, woke squared. I'm very proud of
I know.
Yeah, New York social worker. I'm here for the disenfranchised, all that stuff. However, even for me, I'm okay. Investigate Clinton's mother. I don't give a shit. Whoever's in these files, just investigate them. Get to the bottom of it. Blah, blah, blah. You can't have this conversation with MAGA, right? Because they are so lockstep. There's nothing that they could witness, seemingly, that would move them from that position. And that's problematic. So that's where I think you can't tell them, okay, investigate Trump. Trump does no wrong, period. I think you're starting to see a little something, but a lot of these cult mentality scenarios of that's their deity, and they are pretty well heels dug in around this. And that's where I think we have to stop the bleeding, is to do something about that first before we can even address the Clintons, the Gates, the this, the that. We're in trouble as it relates to MAGA specifically.
Yeah, I think, though, from what I'm seeing in some of the special elections, there's a lot of seats that are turning from red to blue in the midterms coming up. If you guys get to the midterms, is going to be,
right.
I think that it's going to be the turning point of the United States, because personally, I don't think we will ever truly find out the absolute truth behind the Epstein saga. I don't think we'll ever find it. I don't think we'll ever know exactly who the puppet masters were, why it's being done.
Yeah, I do. I've seen the truth come out in almost every scenario in my life. And there's just too many eyes on it. People will whistleblow. He has to be disempowered first.
Yeah.
No one's going to do anything while he's there, because he'll pardon, and he'll, who even knows who's behind that. He could have other people. You could just magically disappear. I could disappear just from talking about it. Who the hell knows? But yeah, it's scary.
Well, and if you look back at history, a lot of these malignant sociopaths, psychopaths always end up collapsing in some way, shape, or form, right? they get too big for their britches, or they think that they're invincible, and they get sloppy, and and we can even take that down into the micro scale in a relationship with a narcissist, right? They think that they can do no wrong and that they'll never get caught, and that ends up being their downfall. It's the criminal mind. It really is, right? That's how so many people end up getting caught. And I hear the stories all the time from my followers too, right? How many times have you heard the story where a narcissist just got too sloppy and their cell phone, they got caught because a text message came through on their cell phone or on their WhatsApp, or it was syncing to their MacBook or their iPad or something? There's always that sloppiness around them because they think that they're invincible. So you're right. Maybe Trump will, or yeah, maybe they'll end up just go out guns ablazing. That's the thing that we really need to worry about, right? Because you spoke with her about that on the podcast, right? About taking down the ship, and I think that's the thing that we really got to worry about.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, but I think I've been watching a lot of serial killer stuff again, which I've seen most of those Netflix shows. But there's an interesting thing that you just made me think of, which is the John Wayne Gacy. There's a part of me that wonders if they want to get caught. Do you remember he would leave messages and shit? And a lot of them do. They'll leave signals. They toy with the police, this kind of thing where they're
the Zodiac killer, right?
Yeah. So they'll toy with it because they're perpetually bored. So yes, they do make mistakes. Yes, they do get caught. But I'm just thinking now, that dance. Can I get away with this? What if I do this now, police officers? What about this DOJ? Can I do this? It's interesting because he's playing this narcissistic game on a grand scale. So maybe he wants to see, what do you think you can do about it? This kind of thing. You really think you could take me on? Let's dance. This kind of shit. It's, oh God.
It floors me to hear the tapes of Trump calling into a radio station or a TV station and posing as somebody else. What the fuck?
The guy's name is John or something. And supposedly he has done that and used the same name, John Barron, right?
Yeah. That's his middle name and his son's name or something like that.
Yeah. And I think he did that in the past. So it was either him or somebody pretending to be.
Yeah. We don't know if it really was him, but if it was an impersonator, they did a pretty damn good job.
Allegedly.
But
yeah, it's you're right. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. There's this flirtation with the law because it feels a flex. I'm in control of this. You can't, and you and I have spoken about my own past, but now I'm actually just thinking right in front of you. And this is why I love our conversations. When I went to court, I think I told you he fell asleep in court. Did you fall asleep? I don't know. Maybe you just did that to see if you could get away with falling asleep, to just see what you see what I'm saying? Let me see if this works. Let me see. Oh yeah. Sorry, Your Honor. I have a cold. I had a cold. This guy, and it worked. But my point is, I wonder, and thumbing his phone and putting his feet up on the, let me see let me see like how I can get away with this, that, or the other thing. So maybe there's a boredom and potentially they're toying with it. Maybe I can get away with this in the eyes of the law. Let me see what I can do now. This kind of stuff.
I would love to speak with a neurologist just to understand the narcissistic brain from a chemical perspective. Is that a dopamine requirement? Is that just them constantly trying to get filled with some kind of supply? And it doesn't matter in what form it comes, because that to me just seems, and you and I have spoken about this, we can't wrap our heads around how their brain works. It doesn't make sense. I think a neurotypical person, when you wouldn't think along those lines, like you and I would go into court and never in a million years ever think about putting our feet up on the desk or chewing a big wad of gum or ignoring the judge and being on our phone. We would never think about doing that. But somebody like that, it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, but I do, and it was actually Mark Vicente who taught me this, was their baseline is lower. And by baseline, so for me, if I were going to feel satiated, right? So here's me on a given day, here's me feeling happy. And for the listeners, I'm pointing up, and feeling depressed, I'm pointing down. And baseline is just a steady line where you're feeling good enough, right? You're satisfied. So for me, that baseline would be, and I've always thought about this, would be throwing a tennis ball with my dog and having a cold beer on a sunny day in my yard. It's not that I'm so elated and I'm not down. I'm just feeling pretty good. This is a good feeling. I'm good. I'm okay right here, right now. And from what I'm gathering is, imagine if you just don't even experience that. There's no satiated. You're just perpetually looking for something to even get you elevated to baseline. So I think that would be how you would characterize perpetual boredom. If you're, and I hate the word boredom because it feels, oh, we all get bored. So it doesn't really quantify just what that's going to look like for them. In terms of oversimplifying, I believe that's accurate. I just think they're bored. So let me stir up some shit. And the dumbest shit I'm talking about, this is somebody who will walk up to a stranger and say, look them in the eye and say, the color blue. And the person is, what are you talking about? And then they walk away, right? And then the person is left with this color blue. Who was that? What's it? All day. It's an energy grab. And they're like, hey, look, I just fucked up that person's day for the whole day. But that's, for them, it gets them out of that boredom. They're just bored.
But it's got to be a temporary spike. What is it? Is it dopamine? Is it, it's you get this little spike and then it goes back down and then it's like, it's very much the drug addict, right? It's like you're chasing the dragon. You can't satiate that need, and you have to do whatever you can in order to try to get those spikes, but you'll never get there, right?
Yeah. And it feels the more malignant they are, the more they're doing that. It's kind of a constant. And the cycles are rapid, because I know in my experience, it was every 2 weeks, there was some major fallout. We could not go longer than that. And I'm sure there are versions of this that are even more fast cycling or rapid cycling in terms of daily energy grab, daily. And I think that shit we can sort of find and see, and we can call out Trump and stuff. But I always tell you, the thing that keeps me up at night is the more covert, those long, where you could go 6 months with no issues, or even years. That shit is just chilling to me. I would prefer to have somebody more overt that you can identify than somebody who's under the radar. That is, to me, the hardest. And experts will tell you there's ways to see it, and they're not wrong. There are things that you and I talk about as far as them being confused by empathy, or having different ways that they communicate or don't communicate in terms of emotional intelligence. But it's still, there's no magic trick to that one. And that one, I think, is really troubling.
Yeah, I've spoken to followers who have been married for 20, 25 years and then woke up to realizing who they've been sleeping in the same bed with for a very significant portion of their life. It is so dysregulating. It's heartbreaking to hear it too. I have changed my opinion around the covert versus the overt, because you and I kind of butted heads on that, where I kept saying the malignant narcissist, the overt ones that must be so much worse. And then now I've kind of transitioned into your camp, because I think the covert ones are there's such an added level of dysregulation that comes with a covert. And it would be interesting. I don't know what the statistics are of the overt versus covert, but I think the coverts might be more the mid-range narcissists that are kind of integrate really well into society and hold jobs and hold really good positions in jobs, and they just cause enough damage to the people around them that leaves a trail of destruction. And then when you're in a relationship with somebody, that I think is when it becomes a very, very dysregulating, because I think what happens is people realize that with a covert narcissist, everything was fake. Nothing was real. You start second guessing yourself, your own ability to spot the toxicity. And I've heard stories of people being, I should have left so long ago, but I didn't know what it was that I was dealing with. And you go years and years and years. And then to undo the damage of that takes a long time. I think the longer somebody is in a relationship with somebody with a toxic personality, I think the longer the healing process is, because you're talking about years of unwinding the damage.
Yeah, it's not that identifiable too. So there's always this lingering. They weren't, for me, it was obvious. I was like, no, this is, trust me, guys, this is what it is. I was like, no, but he was not my first rodeo. I have had other experiences,
Yeah.
and I've talked to you about one of my ex-husbands, not my son's father. And that experience was wild, because really seemingly great guy. There was no issues until I found out he was having an affair for a really long time. And that's the one that throws me off the most, because it's hard for me with confidence to say that there's some kind of a disorder. The only thing I will say is the discard was so abrupt. The emotional intelligence wasn't there. Like now as a single woman, when I go on dates and if I ask people, have you ever been in love? And they're like, I don't know. I'm always, oh shit, check please. My advanced age, you should have made that mistake at least once. Like you're falling in love, whatever it is. But I feel the overt narcissist is maybe adept at pretending. But the coverts, I think they might be confused by the concept. I just remember him being, I don't know, like, what is this thing you speak of? It was a strange concept. I don't know. So there's a couple of little, and they're very subtle little queries that I have. They're not, as I said, these are not surefire anythings. I don't have those for this. People will say, oh, they can play the victim, so can the overt. So to me, that's a little bit trickier to identify.
Well, with the overt, I think it's what you've said. What you see is what you get. It's pretty in your face what you're dealing with. I would say, me personally, a covert narcissist, when the mask slips and you realize that that person never really existed, you start thinking, fuck, what else are they capable of? Or what else have they done behind my back? Or what is it that I'm not knowing? What are they hiding? They're doing that hard of a job, or if they're working that hard to cover up their true self, whether or not they actually know who their true self is up for debate. But if they're working that hard to cover up everything that they truly are, what are they capable of? That, I think, is pretty dysregulating for a lot of people as well.
I think the things, and this is not a clinical conversation right now when I say this, my own personal experience was when I run it through the lens and my own personal experience through overt and covert, the themes were lying, infidelity, confusion around empathy or no empathy at all, and then lazy. The last one I'll add is superficiality. There tends to be this external feeling around, look at me and I have this arm candy of sorts, or there's some superficial narrative that they're playing a role of sorts. And that was just and for me, that's important because I don't have any other clinical thing. So I have to go in this case on my own personal experience. But because I had such extreme versions, what I try to do every time you and I chat is I run it through both to see, does it work? And those are the only ones that work together.
Like the commonality between the two of them. Yeah. It's funny, when you were going through that list, all I could think about was, yep, check mark, check. When I speak with other people, when I speak with a lot of my own followers and I hear the stories, it really is a playbook. Like that's what people need to understand. It's not going to be exactly the same,
right?
But because like not all narcissists will love bomb, it doesn't always show up like that. But when you take a look at the 9 traits within the DSM, you can expand all 9 of those traits into multiple ways of how it shows up in their life. And there's almost like a cluster that you have to look for. And then you have to look for the rigid patterns, because there's psychologists that are saying that a lot of people as a defense mechanism can act in a narcissistic way and can show some of those traits. But I think the difference with pathological personality is that it's very rigid, it's very unwavering, and it does not change over time. That's the kind of where people need to keep that focus on, right?
Yeah. It's tricky. I think that as it relates to Cathy and her work, the identifying this and like the fact that she continues to lead the charge and others are doing all of this research and sharing information. So maybe fast forward a year from now, you and I will be talking about this in a way that's more developed, because it does feel very still fresh. When I went through this relationship, it was only 2020, but 6 years is when I first started. I remember going on LinkedIn and I made a post and I was really nervous because as a clinician, you're supposed to hold space for everyone, including narcissists. You can't come out and be, this part of the world is bad people. Like, you're supposed to rehabilitate. You're supposed to hold space for all of everybody. And I made a post and people came at me. Other clinicians were, oh no, how dare you? And then I'm not even kidding. A year later, everybody was running their mouths. Every clinic, I was, wow. And it's only just grown. There are so many therapists now that are like dealing and talking and chatting. And I don't know if it is the Trump of it all. I don't know if this has unlocked a lot of communication around cults, and good, great. But when I first started, it was not that long ago. And I feel like it's a world away. So people are, who knows what a year will bring.
Yeah, and I think it's being studied, and there's things that, as you said, in a year from now, we could be looking at it with a different lens because of different things that have been researched. Even just the whole nature versus nurture of narcissism, right? You and I speak about that at length. I was under the school the school of thought that it was always upbringing, it was childhood trauma, and blah, and all that stuff. And now my mind's changed on that when you start seeing the research. And I remember, I think it was Peter Salerno said something where he said something, when narcissists talk about childhood trauma, it's all self-reported. It's not verifiable. Who knows whether or not that actually has anything to do with it, right?
Yeah. And if anybody wants to learn about the nature of narcissism, Dr. Peter Salerno did write a great book. It's an easy read. He does go up against a lot of the heavy hitters in this space because he doesn't really subscribe to the nurture of it all as much. And we all know nurture is going to play a role. It's not that he's going to be discounting that entirely. But I tend to be in that camp. I'm with you because I see a lot of lineage. There are twin studies that fascinate me in terms of why are they growing up in the same environment, and one of them is particularly toxic. They had the same upbringing. Why is that kind of stuff? So yeah, it's, to me, that I would agree with you there. And you're right. When did I pivot from that kind of old school nature and nurture perspective? Not that long ago. What, in the last 6 months to a year?
Yeah, and it's the same as me too. I think when you're working in this space, we have to be open to changing our mind, because it's not a black and white study. It's not one way or the other. And I think it's going to be evolving. And as more eyeballs are on this topic and on this subject, and there's more research done and more people are speaking about it, I think we'll probably start to see a lot more patterns that maybe we never saw before in the past. And I love that I'm a big fan of Dr. Gabor Mate. And he talks a lot about the trauma of childhood and how that affects people. And he has this really interesting thing where he says you can have two siblings grow up in the same household. And he'll say no two siblings grow up in the same household, because there's always an age gap between the siblings, and there's always, who knows what the parents were going through at the time, who knows what the environment was like during those formative years of your nervous system being developed and all that stuff. And so the nurture of narcissism, I think, it's an interesting topic that I think gets played up a little too much. That's just my humble opinion, but it'll be interesting to see how that study evolves over the next few years.
And I think the reason why it's still extremely important is because the narcissistic parent or the narcissistic group leader or the narcissistic cult leader will groom their fellowship or their family or their victims. Mm-hmm. So there is a nurture component if you grow up in an environment where you're being brainwashed by somebody at the helm. And so that is glaringly obvious as a variable. I just don't know that those two things happening at the same time also can't be true. You could also be born that and get groomed, which is the fucking worst. But you could be neurotypical and someone could just groom you, and then you wake up, in a fog knowing, okay, I was manipulated, and have some clarity of thought. So that does happen. So nurture can't be discounted. It's not out of the conversation.
Yeah, and we spoke about that actually just recently, about the whole cult thing. Who is susceptible to being brainwashed by a cult? And my question to you was, well, maybe some people are more susceptible, and you snap back pretty quickly. Everyone is.
Yeah, because I grew up with these hippie parents. Nobody was throwing me into Catholicism. And I wasn't taught to be a sheep and fall in line. And I was taught, no, wear different socks, you crazy little bitch. Get out there. Be like a muffin Irish kid, dirty, the whole nine. Nobody was around to steer me It was bordering on neglect. There was just no one there. I was the matriarch and doing all the things. So you could never argue that Vanessa was like, say, easily groomed, and yet there it was. So I don't think so. I think it can happen to anybody. Unless somebody tells you about it, unless somebody goes, listen, beware. There are really shitty people out there. And then I still don't know, because they're really good unless you think the psychopath. I think, I recently spoke to Emma Davey, and you and I will unpack that episode, but she is getting her master's in coercive control in the UK, which is really exciting.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a whole program now there. They've had this law around coercive control since 2015. But she's doing her thesis, and a lot of her work is actually around adolescence, which I know you love. She's going to be, putting programs in place, I'm sure, that will develop an understanding in our youth, which is so important because so many of us, had we known, wouldn't have fallen into these relationships. So that's really, really important. And like I said, a year from now, we could be talking about the coolest shit. We could also be on fire because this fool blows up everything and we're just sitting here with there's fire behind us. Hopefully not. But yeah, her work is really interesting too.
Yeah, the teaching of the adolescents I think it's really important. Being the father of a young daughter, I'll be doing that teaching at home, but it's a dicey topic, right? Because a lot of, and actually you could probably answer this question from a clinician standpoint, but a lot of children and a lot of teenagers kind of display narcissistic traits and then they grow out of it. Some do, obviously, but some don't, right? And so there is a part of me that does get worried about placing labels on kids. I can just imagine teenagers at school being, oh, Billy's a narcissist or what, and he's just a kid.
Billy's just a dick.
Yeah, he's just a dick. Yeah. But I do get worried about that in some way, shape, or form, because I think when it comes to kids, there has to be a certain amount of grace that we have to understand that their brains are still developing until the age of 25. And so I do worry about that. But at the same time, there's also a lot of teenagers who are definitely on that path to cluster B, right, at some point in time in their adulthood. And that's the difficulty is going to be discerning the difference between the two.
Yeah, if your child gets a diagnosis of oppositional defiant disorder, which can be a prerequisite to sociopathy, right? So this is a child that's hurting animals, starting fires. It's not a death sentence. It's not this kid is destined, to your point, to do terrible things. It gives you information that you can monitor and course correct, whether it's medicinally or otherwise. But I still think, yeah, it's still going to be important for the language to be there, for people to see and understand what red flags are. So yeah, they may throw around narcissism, and you're right, it's not ideal, but the alternative feels a lot more scary, especially when they are voted in and they're world leaders. Yeah, we have to take the anti-bullying things in the scholastic realms and put them on steroids. There has to be a zero tolerance policy for this shit. It's enough. You cannot do this stuff. It's so toxic. And look what happens when you go unchecked.
Yeah, and maybe the simple solution is instead of labeling it narcissistic or they just label it as toxic, right? You can label gaslighting, explaining what gaslighting is to people and labeling it as toxic behavior, right? Cheating, infidelity, that's toxic behavior. I think,
yep,
but I've always been fascinated by the whole gaslighting thing because and I remember Mark Vicente actually talked about it on one of his podcasts. They all go to a school and they learn how to gaslight and how to manipulate. And it's basically a form of psychological warfare, right? It's psychological terrorism, right? And I tried to do my best to try to educate people on what gaslighting is, because it was the word of the year in 2022 and people throw it around. So somebody lied to you, oh, they're gaslighting. No, lying is not gaslighting. It's a part of gaslighting. But when you're in a relationship with somebody, the 3 stages of gaslighting is really designed to fuck you up mentally. It completely makes you lose sense of reality, right? Number 1, denying their reality. Number 2, insisting that you're the problem, making you out to be the problem. And then the 3rd stage is repeating it over and over and over again. And it breaks you down psychologically to the point where you think that you're losing touch with reality. And that's where I think we can really educate the younger populations or the younger, the kids that are coming up into the dating world that are getting into relationships, because God, if they end up, that can really mess up somebody for a long time. I've spoken to people where they had a relationship in their early 20s and still 20 plus years later are not over the damage.
Yeah.
That's got to stop. That has to change. And I think hopefully the work that you and I are doing in this space and educating people and trying to bring awareness to it is going to make it a lot better. One person at a time.
It's also important for listeners to understand that gaslighting is not just the quintessential, I didn't do that, confusing shit. Gaslighting can be cyber gaslighting. So this is when somebody hacks into your Apple ID and starts emailing your friends from your email address. Gaslighting can be when things in your home are moved and you don't know where they are. You're absolutely certain that you left the hairdryer there, but it's not there, or your clothing goes missing. Gaslighting is circular conversation. So this is when you find yourself in this repetitive conversation ad nauseum, just for hours and hours, beating this concept up. Just go, word salad. Somebody says something that's completely nonsensical and you're just totally confused. So all of it is designed to confuse you, but it comes in a bunch of different forms. Gaslighting is not just, I didn't say that, you're crazy. It's really not. And people really need to understand that it's more insidious. So for me, if somebody even deflects, my antenna's up. I'm already going, okay, what did you just dance for? Why are you dancing? Just answer the question if it's a yes or no. If you sort of mirror me back or answer my question with another question, again, I'm on alert. Here come the antenna. Anytime you're engaging in communications where I find myself confused, I'm on alert. So It's about confusion. This is so weird. This makes antenna. So I think it's really important for people to identify. It's designed to get you confused. And I remember for me, I started to stutter, and I'm pretty communicative. And I was like,
you're glitching out.
I was okay, this is not Vanessa. And it would start to get anxious when he would come around. It was very Pavlovian, even when he would come around, because I knew he was going to elicit this thing in me where I was going to just have a hard time, to your point, discerning, is this real? What's going on? Gaslighting isn't just one thing. It's a whole bunch of other shit.
I just actually learned a new expression this morning. It's called gish gallop. Have you heard of that?
No.
Oh my God. And it was from Lee Hammock's. He did an extended reel, and it was this woman who was confronting her boyfriend about cheating. I don't know exactly what the story was, but it was something this woman was confronting her boyfriend about cheating on his ex-fiance with her. Because when they started dating, he said that they were broken up, but they actually didn't really truly break up until they were certain. There was a little bit of crossover, maybe, for instance. And so the focus of the conversation was him lying to her about when he broke up with his ex-fiance. And then she made a comment about, I would think as a 41-year-old male, she made some comment about his age. And then he took the conversation and directed it. What does my age have to do with it? And then he started attacking her about his age. And I have witnessed that. I've been a part of those conversations where you're literally sitting there. No. Okay, stop focusing on the age. Let's get back to what we were originally talking about, which is you lying to me about blah, 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 blah. And when I heard that expression, I wrote it down because I didn't know if I'd be able to work it into our conversation today, but that's all a part of the whole gaslighting mentality. It's where it's at the end of the conversation, or if you hang up the phone, you're sitting there going, what the fuck just happened? That was not an adult conversation. That was not an adult conversation. There was no beginning, middle, and end of that conversation. That was just a whole bunch of circular references, and it was deflections, it was denials, it was everything. And it was you. And I have, it's actually really funny if you could see some of my text messages and correspondence with a certain person, where it's literally, you have to get to the point where you ask a question so direct that they can't give you the word salad runaround deflection. Right. You literally have to ask them a question, yes or no.
And they
And
still won't answer you, right?
that's true. And I might have
Yeah. I
recordings.
mean, I remember in my relationship, this is a New York reference. I used to say, I'm on Houston Street. Stop taking me down avenues A, B, C, and D. Because that's
Oh
what
my
would happen.
God, that's
We'd be
great.
talking about this, and then I would end up on a different avenue. I was like, oh, how are we over here now? This is the topic, right? So yeah, anytime that's a really good point. Additionally, in terms of gaslighting, if you're taking down different avenues and you're, how am I over here now? Antenna up.
Yeah. And if you end the conversation and you're thinking, I am more confused now than at the beginning of the conversation, I don't know what the hell just happened.
Yeah.
It's designed to psychologically break you down, to make you second guess yourself, make you second guess everything. It basically gets you to, they're denying your reality.
Yeah.
And
And
you start gaslighting yourself and thinking that you're the problem.
yeah, and they will sometimes mirror you. So if you say to the narcissist, I can't believe you did this to me. I can't breathe. And they'll be, breathe? I can't. Sometimes they'll also pull your story from you. And you're like, how the fuck did you just make this about yourself? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so there's a lot of those poor communication skills that people might make excuses for. Well, okay, this person just does this. This is how they talk. No. Communication is something we can fix and work on. Pathological personality disorders, not so much.
No. And I think that's the key, right? The key is that when you start seeing these patterns, yeah, at the beginning of a relationship, maybe the person just can't communicate well. Maybe
Right.
they're not good at it, but there's certain things that can be learned, that can be worked on. But when you notice that pattern and it doesn't change over time, or it might change temporarily and then revert right back into the old patterns, that is why, and I said it before on the podcast, and I'll say it again, journal.
Oh, yeah.
Make sure you remember and you write down these examples, because if you are in a relationship with somebody who has very highly narcissistic traits or are actually diagnosed as with narcissistic personality disorder, I can almost guarantee your brain fog, your memory can be completely, it will be completely changed from your past. You and I have spoken about this with my specific example where I got into an argument with someone over text, and it was very, very serious. It was a very serious, where this person left for a couple of days. And years later, I was searching for a text on my phone, and I was looking for a keyword, and this text conversation popped up. And hand on my heart, I do not remember that argument whatsoever. If it was not for the fact that it was on text, I would have completely forgotten about that incident that took place. It really actually spooked me, to be honest with you, because I started thinking, like, it's just like early dementia? Am I forgetting things? What the hell? And it wasn't like an argument about, oh, you didn't pick up milk on the way home from work. It was a very serious discussion, very serious topic.
Yeah, and they will flood you with so much information, as we're seeing politically, that you are going to be forgetting all the things. So journaling is so important. And so if you're listening and you had a narcissist in your life and you've begun to date and you're putting yourself into the dating world again, journal right from day one. Take notes. If you see something feels weird, just take a note of it, because the real issue with NPD and falling into these abusive scenarios is that by the time you figure it out, it's often too late. So you want to figure this stuff out like within the first 6 months, ideally. And at 4 months, people generally will begin to show you their true colors. Even if they're neurotypical, people start to stop worrying about, oh, I'm not going to put on the makeup, or I'm going to fart, or I'm going to do the thing.
Yeah.
You're going to let yourself, that's not devaluing, that's not abusive behavior, but people are on their best behavior when they are making their first impression. But I would say between 4 and 6 months, start to pay acute attention, really pay attention to how people receive the word no. How are they communicating?
Yeah. I always...
No, it's just tremendous. I did this when I started dating, and it was wildly helpful, because I would forget, even in just a 4-month clip, I forgot a bunch of shit. And then I saw it and I was, oh, that's not good. This kind of stuff.
Yeah. I always tell people there's 2 things that you can really do to understand whether or not somebody possesses empathy at all. It's not a foolproof way, but number 1, say no to them. Change your plans with them one day because something came up, and don't do it maliciously, but just do it as almost as a litmus test. And then the second thing is sit down and tell them how they made you feel in a very specific scenario. Do they listen to you? Do they try to understand why you're feeling that? Do they turn it back on you? Do they start blaming you? Those are the types of things. If you tell somebody how you feel about what they did, and it turns into an argument and it turns into a Darvo scenario, what you said, where it's, I can't remember what that example was, where you said, and then they turn it back on you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really, really good, I would say it's not foolproof, but it's definitely something that you want to keep in your memory bank.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Dave, as you and I can go at this for hours.
That's true.
We do. But let's pause. We don't want to give all the goods in one pod. But let's pause here and let's on to the next. So the next interview, let's see what we have next. We did Cathy. Oh, yeah. Well, we have a couple of treats. I'm not going to say them now, but a bunch of fun interviews that we'll get into over the next few weeks that will add a ton of color. I just can't get into too much of it now, but it's very exciting, very fun, good conversations, and we'll unpack all of them. Thank you, Dave.
Oh, thank you. And Vanessa, I just wanted to tell you, thank you so much for including me on this podcast, because you and I have been friends for years. We always have great conversations. And just for the listeners, Vanessa is a rock solid human being. And our conversations we've always said we should just start a podcast because we unpack so many things and both of us have these big aha moments. And a lot of kudos to Vanessa for doing all the heavy lifting and getting this podcast set up. And hopefully she and I can bring some wisdom to a lot of you who are going through these toxic and pathological relationships.
Yeah. And if you have questions for us, DM us at Vanessa Reiser, LCSW. I don't know if you want to share your Instagram, but send us
healing after a narcissist.
Yeah. So send us questions if you have queries and you want us to talk about any topics. Subscribe, share. And for us, I know it's always been a collaboration. If someone tells you they know all things, they're lying. We're curious to hear any feedback, if anybody has questions or topics that they want us to talk about. But thank you, Dave. And I really appreciate our friendship. And for a fact, almost daily for the last few years, I have had so many puzzle pieces, whether it's politically or familial or in my past experience or otherwise, just a lot of connections that have been really transformative. So I'm so glad we get to share this with other people now.
Yeah, me too.
Have a wonderful evening.
Ciao.
Bye. Bye, guys. Thank you for joining us today on Narcissistic Abuse with Vanessa Reiser. If this episode resonated with you, or if you recognize any of these patterns in your own life or someone you care about, know that you are not alone and healing is possible. If you found value in this conversation, please take a moment to like, subscribe, share, and leave a review. It helps us reach more survivors who need to hear these messages. For exclusive bonus content, deeper discussions with Dave and me, and ways to support the show, join us on Patreon or follow along on Instagram or YouTube at Vanessa Reiser LCSW. Until next time, keep choosing yourself, setting boundaries, and walking toward the light. And remember, healing is a radical rebellion, and your peace is the revolution. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.